Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1702. The topic is mindset, and the title is People Judge You Less Than You Think. I was talking with somebody recently, and a lot of the conversation was focused on their fear of what others were thinking of them or what others were thinking of them. I replied, "You're not as important as you think." This makes me a complete jerk. But they laughed, I laughed, but it's important to recognize that. There's value and there's goodness that can come from realizing that you are not as important as you think you are. You're just not. That me too. So I'm talking to myself, but we're not really that important. Now, what I mean by this is people are too busy with their own crap, with their own needs, with their own demands, with their own stressors to think about you. You're not as important to them as you think they are. You're just not. They have so much of their own crap they're going to deal with that if they think of you, it's going to be a very quick thought and then they're going to move on. A couple life lessons, I guess. One thing that was fun for me. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. My graduating high school class was in the 60s, like 60-some, not 1960s, not that old, but like we had 60-some kids in our graduating class. I knew everyone's name. Actually, that's not even true. I don't know some of their names. Yeah, that's sad. But I know people, I've had clients or friends, they've graduated with, 1,000 plus. There's one person that graduated in New Jersey with 2,000 people in his graduating class. That's insane. That's like a freaking university, not a high school. Our high school, the high school I graduated from, there was 60-some people in my graduating class. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Everybody knew everything about everyone because it was so small and there's nothing else happening. Then I went to my undergrad at the University of Pittsburgh. I went to the big city, quote unquote, little country bumpkin going to the city. And what I thought was funny was everybody in the country and what you hear on TV and stuff is like cities are dangerous, cities are dangerous, cities are dangerous. And there was definitely some dangers. A lot of crazy stuff. I accidentally picked up a hooker one time. That's a whole long story. I witnessed somebody getting shot that I didn't realize until that was creepy and crazy. But I literally just saw somebody got shot. That was nuts. I witnessed a robbery, which I almost became part of, which is another crazy story. A lot of crazy things happened in the city. But one thing that was neat was no one cared. Part of being a student at the University of Pittsburgh is you get free bus transportation because the classes and the buildings are kind of spread throughout the city. It makes it very challenging because then they give you 10 minutes to get from one class to the other, and you might have to walk a couple city blocks, which is not going to happen in 10 minutes. So their brilliant idea was to try to give you a bus pass for free, but the bus stops at every damn city block, so you might as well walk. But when I was on the bus, what I thought was funny was everybody was so busy, nobody even looked at you, nobody paid attention to you. You could do somersaults, and people would just be like, they might look and then look away, and they'll go back. But it was interesting to me when I got to the city that when you're around other you would think they're going to be looking at you and judging you. They're not. You're just not as important as you think you are because they have so many other things that are going on in their life. Think about how often you think about the people in your life. You might think of one person quite often because maybe they're really annoying and you're frustrated with them. But you don't often think of a lot of people in your life. You might have flashing thoughts. You might see somebody and say, "Oh shit," and try to walk the other way. You might look at them and go, "Oh man, I really like this person. I want to try to catch a conversation with them." So you might have some fleeting thoughts or kind of quick thoughts, but usually it's you see them, you have a thought, then you move on, right? So what's interesting to me then is how often we think that other people think about us. And for example, if you're in the gym and maybe you don't want to go to the gym because you're overweight, and it's like, I don't want to go to the gym. Everybody's going to be looking at me and staring at me. No, they're not. They're busy trying to not like feel insecure about themselves. They're busy with their own goals. They're busy with themselves. So they might look at you and say like, "Ooh, that person's overweight. Like, I'm glad they're in here." Or that person's overweight. Oh, I hope they can stick through it. Like very rarely do people actually have like negative thoughts. They might like be recognition. They might be aware that you're there. But they're not going to sit there and judge you and judge you and judge you. They're going to look at you, have a thought, and move on with their life. If you're doing a squat, maybe you're doing a squat and you're like, maybe my squat looks bad. I don't want to squat in front of people. There's these groups of people that look like they know how to squat, or this person knows how to squat really well, and I kind of feel insecure when I squat when they're around because they probably look at my squat and think it's trash. 99.9% of the time, they would look at your squat and they're probably like, man, I wish I could give that person some advice. 99.9999999. If they know something, how often, oh gosh, this is a whole rant, but if you know something that can help someone else, aren't you motivated to go share that? Because number one, you think you can make their life better, and number two, you get to seem like you're valuable and you know something and it makes you feel better about yourself, right? So if somebody looks at your form and says, ugh, they're not going to think, oh, that form is trash, that person's an idiot. They're going to say, that form's trash, I really wish I could go over and give that person some advice. Or I remember when I used to do that, and man, my back hurt all the time. Their back's probably miserable. That's it. Like, most people will want to help you because, number one, it feels good to help somebody for that person's sake, and it feels good to be the one helping because then you feel more valuable and important yourself. So people are going to want to help you because they want the validation of themselves. So again, it's more about them than it is about you. It's just, that's the way it works. Also, people tend to care about what you can provide for them more than what's going on for you. I remember there was one of my best friends. We were new to knowing each other, and he found out that I knew a good bit about nutrition, and he asked me to help his wife with some advice. At the time, I was working about 70 billion hours a week. I was tired as hell, sleeping on the floor in the gym more nights than I was actually going home. I had a sty, like on my left eye. I'm actually blind in my left eye, so thankfully it wasn't my right eye, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to see anything for a couple of days. So it was on my left eye. I was trying to, put a wet washcloth on it, try a warm washcloth when I could, but I was training 12 hours of people a day, doing all this other stuff. I just looked like a wreck. I'd lost 30 pounds the first month of owning the gym, had a sty in my eye, I was wearing a shirt, I don't even know if it was clean or had holes in it, I have no clue. I looked like a mess, an absolute mess. But he asked me to go to his house and meet his wife and help her with nutrition advice. So I went. I talked to them. The entire time I talked to them, I looked like I hadn't slept in a month. I had a sty in my left eye. I think I was coughing because I had a dry patch in my throat. I looked just absolute freaking train wreck. And I remember this because as I was doing it, I was like, dear God, this is the worst I could represent myself. I'm a sad, pathetic mess. But I wanted to help because it was information I knew. And it was important for him because the wife was having trouble with arthritis to the point where she couldn't hold a comb to brush her daughter's hair. She couldn't, tie her daughter's shoelaces. I mean, the arthritis was so bad. And a lot of it was nutritional based. So I could give some nutrition advice. It ended up being really helpful. She was able to correct a lot of the issues, be able to do the hairbrush, be able to tie the shoes. It's made a huge change in their life since that day. But that day, what they were not focused on was how much of a mess I was. What they were focused on was how much I was able to help them. How much the information that was being presented to them could change and benefit their life. So when you think other people are judging you, 99.9% of the time, they're not. They're busy with their own life. If they're thinking about you, it's a quick thought and they're moving on. And if they think about you and they see something as a mess that they could help, 99.9% of the time, they're wishing they could help. They're not thinking about you as a negative. They're just saying, man, I wish I had time to help, or I wish I could help. I don't know if that person would want my advice. They usually have their own self-doubts. Why would they want advice from me? I'm not a coach. Or why would they want advice from me? I'm not the world's best at this thing. So they often have their own limitations, their own fear of being judged. That's actually in their way, right? If we are afraid of being judged by others, something I would urge you to consider is the opinion of others of you or of your actions or what you're doing. You should put weight to the opinion of others as a very small group of people. It is good to have some form of external checking of yourself. For people who are religious, like I'm religious, a Christian, I would use the Bible as like a reference. Whatever your religion might be, you might use your religious text or your religious, rules or laws or whatever it might be. So there can be an external source like that. You can also have a person. When you have people that you would say, okay, I care what they think about me, I strongly urge you to be very selective of who those people are. I can't emphasize this enough, that the majority of people that you will know in your life, you should not give a shit what they think about you. That's aggressive, but it's true. Most people have their own demons, their own things they're working on, and we all are flawed. Every single one of us are flawed in some ways. Some people are a little more visible flaws than others. Some people have more they need to get together for themselves, like within themselves, than others. But the reason why I'm saying it this way is you should pick the people who you care about their opinion of you based on what their life looks like. Are they living a life that you would want to live? Do they speak to others the way that you would want to speak to others? Do they have relationships that you would want to have? Do they have success in business that you would want to have? What does their life look like? If their life looks like something that you would want to have, then their knowledge set would be something that would be good to tap into. So therefore, their opinion of what you're doing would be good to get. So for example, that same friend who I helped his wife, he is an amazing father. And from everything that I can see, he's an amazing husband. He has great relationships. He is a good person. I want that. I want to be a good person. So it's helpful for me to see, okay, what does he do? And I'll try to do similar things that fit my life. And if he were to say something to me about the way I handle my relationships, I would give that consideration. The people that if somebody's going to judge us and we want to have an emotional reaction or adjust what we're doing based on that judgment, we want to be selective and have it be purposefully selective of who that is. And that should be based on the quality of their life and what they emulate and do. If somebody judges you, but they are a hot mess, they have a miserable life, or they're just not a good person, them judging you is likely still going to create some type of emotional response. But you should not change what you do or, don't bother defending yourself to that person. They're not going to give a shit. Like, they have their own messed up values and they need themselves to be seen as right for their own mind. So even if you were to justify what you were doing, it's not going to matter. They're going to find a way to disagree because they need to disagree for them to feel better about themselves. So trying to argue with an illogical person using logic, it makes you stupid because they don't operate off logic, obviously. So if somebody's judging you and they're like, I think you're too busy or you're doing too much, but yet they're a lazy bum and they don't do anything, why would you care what they think? If they don't do anything with their life and they're telling you that you're doing too much, you're doing too much based on their standard, and their standard isn't the standard that you want, right? You should put emotional weight on and actually make changes to or consider making changes to only based on the opinions of people that you would want a life like theirs. if you wouldn't want a life like theirs. As much as you can, try to minimize the emotional response and say, yeah, it feels it's a bummer to be judged. It's a bummer to be told that they think I'm doing something wrong. But I know it's right for me. I know it's right for the people that I want my life to turn out for. This is what they do, so I'm going to keep doing it. I'm sad for that person that they don't realize that this is actually valuable, because it would lead to a better life for them. But I'm not going to change my life to be more like somebody's life who I don't want. I'm going to keep my life on track by following the people that have a life that I would want. Right? And then when it comes down to how you can help others, don't worry about the sty in your eye. Don't worry about how tired and miserable you look. Just focus on how much you're helping them. People care more about your impact on their life than they care about what you're doing within your own life. They care about you, to some degree. I don't mean to be so callous about it. But when you're trying to help other people, don't worry about yourself so much. Focus on what you're able to do for the other person. It's amazing how helpful we can be in ways that have absolutely no credentials related. How helpful would it be to somebody to just be there for them? They're going through a tough time. Just send them a text that said, hey, I recognize you're going through a tough time. If you need anything, reach out. That can mean the world to somebody. And you don't have to be the best at anything in order to do that, right? If somebody's telling you about their day, this is something I struggle with very, very much, is to slow down and listen. And listen to them, recognize what they're going through, be an active listener, say, yeah, that sounds really stressful. It's a bummer you have to go through that. You don't have to try to fix it. That's going to be very hard for some of you. I'm not much of a fixer, as much as I just don't want people to talk to me if they're not trying to fix anything. That's my problem. If you're not trying to fix it, I don't give a shit. If you're trying to fix it, I'll help you. Or I'll listen. But if you're not doing anything about it, for the love of God, don't bother complaining to me. But that's something I need to work on. I need to be more compassionate in that way. But if you're somebody who, whenever somebody complains to you and you just try to fix all of their problems, you're taking away their own development, you're taking away their autonomy, you're taking away their ability to just vent their emotions and frustrations. You're actually going to cause more problems for them. They're going to shut down and not talk to you. If you're a fixer, you're probably going to be very annoying to everybody around you. So you need to be very careful and say, hey, I'm hearing what you're saying. Do you want me to help at all, or are you just venting? You want me to just listen? Do you want me to get involved, or do you want me to listen? That's actually a great question to ask. As blatant, as just basic as that sounds, when somebody's telling you their problems, don't cut them off. Let them talk. And when it gets to the point where you can respond, you can actually ask. Say, hey, do you want me to get involved in this, or do you want me to just listen for now? And I would say that you're probably going to be surprised, if you're a fixer, that more often people are just going to want you to listen than they're going to want you to get involved. And if you are willing to just listen, they'll continue to talk to you and you'll continue to have a great relationship with that person. But if you try to get involved all the damn time with everybody's problems and they have not asked you to, people are going to start shutting you out. So it's important to know that. I got way off topic and it got a lot into a lot of stuff here. But I overall, when it comes to our fear of what others think of us, they don't think about you as much as you think they do. Okay? As I said as a joke, you're not as important as you think you are. Everybody has their own struggles, everybody has their own challenges, everybody has their own self-doubts and their own fears of being judged. They're probably thinking more about what you're thinking about them than they are thinking about you. That's just the way it works. So do what's best for you. Get some self-check-ins. Make sure you're not a complete psycho and super selfish. But when you're worried about what others are thinking of you, and that's preventing you from doing something that's good for you, stop that. Do the thing that's best for you. If other people are going to judge you, remember that judgments only matter if they're from somebody that you actually would want their life. And if they are judging what you're doing, then, man, maybe you want to take a double check and just see, okay, is what I'm doing actually the right thing? If this person has my best interests in mind and they have a life that I would want, they have like the end goal. If I want to get stronger and this person's strong and they're saying, hey, what you're doing isn't going to work, that's valuable. That's valuable to listen to them. They're not the only source. Go learn and, get education and a bunch of other resources as well. But that is something to consider. But again, if you're supposed to do something, you want to do something that's best for you, and others are judging you, don't worry about that. Continue to do what you need to do. Recognize that if they're judging you, it's mostly because they need what they're doing to be right, so they don't feel wrong and they don't feel like they're being judged. Again, it mostly comes down to we do things self-oriented. So if somebody's judging you, keep doing what you need to be doing. Progress your life in the direction that you want it to be so you can enjoy their life. If that makes them more defensive about their life, so be it. You absolutely should not live a less than your best life just to make someone else feel better. Often, you becoming your best can push them, can motivate them to do the same. So, overall, people judge you less than you think. Do the things that you should do to create and live your best life. If judgments come along with that, so be it. Be a badass. Live a life you love. Live a life you enjoy. This is the only one you will get, at least that we're aware of. This is the only life you're going to have. Please, I urge you to enjoy it as much as you possibly can, to fulfill it as much as you possibly can. Okay, I wish you the best. If there's anything I can help with, just email me at brutalironjim@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please share it. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support it, which you can do on our website, www.brutalironjim.com. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us, and please follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Jim. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.